Hi everyone, this is chapter 9.5b. This time we're going to talk about tangent and cotangent. So first of all, let's talk about tangent. So tangent um, is going to be in a period of 1 pi. Okay, so if you're plotting the table and then just plotting points, and you're going to figure out that whenever you guys see a period of 1 pi is actually from positive pi over 2 to negative pi over 2. And this is the period of 1 pi. Okay, this is the pi that we're talking, this is the period we're talking about. Okay, okay, so now we need to know that when you plug in points, if you plug in negative pi over 2, and if you plug in pi over 2, you guys are gonna see that um, it's undefined. So the tangent negative pi over 2 or tangent pi over 2, it's going to be undefined for both of them. Okay, which means that this brings us to something called asymptotes. Okay, so a brief explanation on asymptotes is that it's basically an invisible line that we usually um, use it use the dotted lines to represent that your graph cannot cross these lines, okay? Because if your function is tangent negative pi over 2 or tangent pi over 2, it will be undefined, okay? So you cannot cross those lines. So what you're gonna do is, when you're graphing this, in this lesson, the a value, it's gonna go back to what we learned before. It's gonna be steeper or flatter. Okay, so how is it steeper? Is when your a value is greater than 1. And if it's flatter, that means your a value is between 0 and 1. Okay, and then the b value is going to be the one that determines the period. So whatever the b value is, for example, this one, the parent function, b value equals to 1. So you're going to use pi over 1, and that's going to be your period. So it's going to be 1 pi. So when we're graphing this, I want you guys to draw the parent function. It's going to look like this: half of the parabola on quadrant 1, and then the other half of the parabola is going to be in quadrant 3, and then in the quadrant 3 it's going to be upside down parabola. Okay, this is the parent function in yellow. Now I'm going to give you some examples on how to graph the tangent functions. Okay, so whenever you guys start with this, just plotting the xy axis, okay, and then determine what um, you should determine what the period is. So b value equals to 1, which means that pi over 1, it's going to be pi. Okay, so you're going to break this period of pi into equal halves. It's going to be, the first half is going to be the positive pi over 2. The other half is going to be on negative pi over 2. Okay, and understand that there's going to be, you don't have to do this asymptote thing. Okay, I'm just drawing it to let you understand that your tangent graph is going to be within these area between negative pi over 2 and pi over 2, and then you cannot cross it. So now let's draw the parent function. So parent function is just the tangent theta, okay? So it's going to look like this. Okay, so a value is 2 means it's going to be steeper. Okay, so you're going to give me a steeper curve on both quadrant 1 and then quadrant 3, like that. Okay, so the curve in pink, it's going to be your actual answer. Okay, so this time we're gonna have a flatter one. So A value is 1/2. That means it's gonna be flat. Okay, and then B value is 1, which means that your period is gonna be pi over 1, which is pi. Okay, so on the XY axis, you know that half of the pi is going to be on the positive side, so it's pi over 2. The other half is going to be negative pi over 2. This time I'm going to just ignore drawing the asymptotes. Okay, so that's draw the parent function. Okay, that's the parent function. So how do you draw a flatter one? So flatter one, I'm going to make sure that um, both sides of the curve is just flatter. Eventually it's going to go really straight. Okay. Okay, let me do this one more time on the bottom part. Okay, so you see that this is a slightly a little flatter on these ends. Flat, flat. Okay, so that's example 2. Now what happened if my B value is different? Now let's talk about the A value. A value equals to 1, so there's no change on the steepness. And then talk about the B value. So the B value equals to 4 means that now my period is going to be pi over 4. Okay, that's my period. Okay, so half of the pi over 4 is going to be on the positive side, and half of it is going to be on the negative side. Okay, so how do you do this? So you're going to use pi over 4 to divide it by 2, which is pi over 4 multiplied by 1/2, which is going to be pi over 8. So on this side is going to be pi over 8, and the other side is going to be negative pi over 8. Okay, erase these and just go ahead and draw my function. So this one is going to be no steepness change. So you're just going to go ahead and draw the curve on the quadrant 1 and 3 like that. Okay. Okay, let's draw the XY axis. And then you know that B is the one that's changing. B is 1/2. So pi over 1/2, this time is going to be 2 pi. Okay, so my period is going to actually expand into 2 pi, and then half of it is going to be the pi. The other half is going to be negative pi. That's sum to 2 pi, right? Okay. All right, go ahead and graph the function. And that's it. So what happens if I have A and B? They're both got values that's not 1. So let's go ahead and write the A value. That's 1/2. So it's going to be flat. Okay, it's going to be flatter. And then the B value is 1/2, which means that pi over 1/2 is going to be 2 pi. Okay, now just go ahead and label every component. So a period of 2 pi, half of it is going to be pi, the other half is going to be negative pi. Okay, let's do the parent function because the steepness is going to change. So the parent function looks like this. Okay, now I'm going to draw something flatter. Okay, so the curves in pink shows you that shows the answer of 1/2 tangent. All right, this time we're going to talk about cotangent. So cotangent is going to be a little different. Um, well, very similar to tangent, but slightly different in terms of my starting point. If you plug in 0, 0 degree, and a pi, you're going to get undefined. So cotangent 0 is going to be undefined, and cotangent pi is going to be undefined. So which means that your asymptotes are going to be on these two lines, passing through 0 and pi. Okay, and since you should put you should mark a halfway label. Okay, you don't have to really label out what that is, but understand that for the parent function, since cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent, so this time we're going to have a little bit of a reverse on the curve. So your curve is going to look like this. Okay, it's going to be on the first quadrant, in the fourth quadrant like this. Okay, so this is your parent function. All right, so let's just go ahead and try what's going to happen when it's 2 cotangent theta. Okay, so A value is 2, that means it's going to be steeper. Okay, the B value is 1, and then pi over 1 is going to be pi. So this is going to be within a period of 1 pi. So you can go ahead and grab the period. It's going to be from 0 and pi. Okay, I marked a halfway, knowing that in between when the curve hits halfway of the period, it's gonna change the direction. So which means that when I'm drawing it, this is my parent function. Okay, when it reaches to the halfway of the period, it's gonna turn to become a negative parabola. Okay, and now let's talk about, since this is gonna be steeper, you want to make sure that your curve is going to be steeper on both ways. Okay, that's it. Number 7. This time we got A value equals to 1/2. That means it's going to be flatter. No change on the B value. So B equals to 1, so pi over 1, it's just going to be pi. Okay, so the period is going to be 1 pi. So it's going to be between 0 and a pi, and let me mark the halfway point. Okay, so for the parent function, it's going to be shown in yellow, and then this time we know that this is going to be a flatter curve. So it's going to be flatter. Eventually it's going to go up like a straight line, but what you're going to show me is that the part where you start going up or down, it's going to be flatter. So this is the part I'm talking about here. So this is the part. These are the two parts. You have to show me that it's getting flatter for your answer. It has to be flatter than the parent function. Okay, so let's go ahead and try example 8. Let's draw the XY axis. Okay, it looks like B value is 2, so it's going to be in the period of pi over 2. So when you're labeling it, it's going to be pi over 2. Halfway of the pi over 2, this is where the curve is going to turn. And then you're looking at the A value is 1, so there's no change in the steepness. So let's just go ahead and graph the only one that we need to, the only curve we need to show. So just go ahead and graph the curve. Okay. Oops. Okay, number 9. So let's look at x-y-axis, and looks like my b value is 1/2. Make sure that I'm still recording. Okay, b equals to 1/2. That means your period is going to be pi over 1/2. So that's going to be 2 pi. Okay, so it's going to be in a period of 2 pi. Okay, so between 0 and 2 pi, halfway is going to be pi. You don't have to label it because just a reminder on how the curve is going to shift from positive to negative. Okay, so just go ahead and this is the positive side. Hit the midpoint, go to the negative side. Okay, that's your cotangent 1/2 theta. Last one. So this time we got the a value equals to 2, so it's going to be steeper. So later we have to show two curves since there is a steepness in change. The b value is going to be 1/2, which means that the period is going to be pi over 1/2, which is going to be 2 pi. Okay, so you're going to show that it's going to be between 0 and then 2 pi. Okay, halfway of 2 pi is a pi. Don't worry about labeling that one. Okay, let's graph the parent function. So this one is going to be the positive side and hit the midpoint, go to the negative side. Okay, now we're going to show a curve that's steeper. So steeper on both sides. So steeper means that it's going to be closer to a straight line. So it's looking more like a straight line. Okay, this is example 10. That's the last example. You guys might aware that I'm not showing you guys any horizontal or vertical translations. It's just because I look at the textbook, it's not in there. Just go ahead and just worry about the a value and b value, and that should be it for what you guys are going to be quizzed on later. Okay, 9.5b, that's finished. And then next one is going to be 9.6, no more graphing. You guys going to do some calculations, and then good luck and stay safe and healthy.